So one of the main selling points of Fantasy Knockout definitely is the fact that it can make pretty much any day better than what it was prior to you watching one of the episodes. This episode really kind of centered around a lot of Tachibana and doing like some emotional searching, and it caused us to have a lot of really hilarious scenes that came to fruition because of it. And when it came to JINGUJI, because of Tachibana's actions, we got a lot of hilarious scenes as well. Meanwhile, all of this funniness that occurred was all layered upon with actual story that is going to drive and is driving the story actually forward. Now with the princess getting involved and kind of this kingdom and the king and everything else, right? So episode definitely starts with them getting found out, for basically the church scene that occurred last time, getting found out by the girl with the red hair who ended up being one of the I guess you should call it supervisor or whatever, but she's basically in part of like the Ministry of Affairs essentially within this kingdom. And that takes them to the kingdom, takes them to meet the king, and takes them to finally find out that that specific kingdom, that hierarchy that happens there, that they worship the goddess, and then they have a plan. And the king does a cool little song and dance number and stuff, which is freaking hilarious in itself. Then that comes to find them being invited to a party where Tachibana meets the princess, and she's about to commit a heinous act on herself and throw herself off of a building, and she ends up saving the princess because she asked her for advice. And the advice, she tells her about JINGUJI and kind of what's been going on. And she's looking for some pat on the back office worker type advice. And the one that she gets is like, oh, I know this feeling all too well. You want to be praised. And Tachibana's like, absolutely, I do not want to be praised. And after a little soul searching, she finds out like, holy crap, I've never been praised by JINGUJI. That's exactly what I want right now, which is a common feeling that a lot of us could definitely associate with. And that whole entire scene with her finally figuring out that, hey, those feelings that she's having, they run pretty deep. And I like that they keep showing us the internal struggle that JINGUJI and Tachibana have been having when it comes to their attraction for each other. And the one that I enjoy seeing on screen a little more, obviously you have Tachibana stuff, but like when it comes to this internal struggle is actually JINGUJI, because JINGUJI is a man who is completely okay with, I think, being with, if it can kind of get over that mental hurdle. I think he's someone who could come along or come around to being with Tachibana, how she was before, or how he was before. I think that he could totally come around with that, and who Tachibana was in the prior life, JINGUJI could totally be okay with having Tachibana as his partner. And that is an interesting development, because now that the tables have turned and Tachibana is kind of more idealistic towards, what he imagined himself with, he has an even harder internal struggle, because he probably would have been okay with their prior relationship taking that next level step. But now, because he has Tachibana in a current state, he struggles with that even more. He's constantly having to throw himself off of that path. Then flip side, you have Tachibana whose feelings are coming out, and the feelings that he had prior of admiration and admiring JINGUJI for who he was and how he acted, and their relationship how it was before, those have now kind of flipped, and they're kind of like spurring on these romantic feelings, which is really interesting to see as well, because then you have Tachibana, like, in this episode, right? You have Tachibana kind of exploring those emotions and kind of what Tachibana wants out of this, and it's recognition and constant praise and comforting and all these things that on a deeper level go to like a romantic sense. Also, we got to call out that scene where JINGUJI quickly had a whole montage of them living their life, getting married, getting old, and having the JINGUJI grave. A little morbid, but we have like that he had the whole stages of life. Which I was like, and he had to like shake himself out of it. That scene was absolutely freaking ass hilarious. Then obviously we keep moving forward. We have the whole stuff with the princess trying to come along the path of the demon lord, because she's just trying to break out of this kingdom. And then Tachibana basically low key sympathizing and empathizing with the princess's position, and in doing so, kind of like ixnayed JINGUJI from that, and that causes JINGUJI to go into like a mild depression because he's worried about Tachibana leaving him for the princess, because he knows that in Tachibana's prior life that he lived before this transition, that the princess kind of fits all of Tachibana's old ideals. And as he said, on top of looks wise and personality, she's also a princess. But little do we know that that leads Tachibana to an ill fate, because the princess's freedom causes her to upstage a rebellion, which is extremely interesting in itself. So Tachibana is now caught between a rock and a hard place, and now, quote unquote, that guy, as the king calls it, is now being called into action. But that's kind of like the gist of everything that occurred, with my opinion stacked on top of it. But overall, I mean, every single week I look forward to this anime. Sorry for the review being a little late, but this anime was definitely extremely good. I laughed a whole ton during this episode. The scenes with Tachibana are hilarious. The scenes with the supervisor girl, which with her not being able to say no to the king, hilarious. The fact that the cart guy ends up like stacking stuff on top of JINGUJI's head, and then gets a letter, and that letter says that his supervisor's being captured. Like, all of that stuff is just freaking hilarious, and I can't wait to see what happens next, and be able to laugh, and be able to have next week's Tuesday become even better than what it was before I watched it. So let me know what you guys thought about this week's episode down in the comments below. As always, I appreciate you being here for this week's episode of Fantasy Knockout. I'll see you guys next week for next week's episode of Fantasy Knockout, and I look forward to seeing what you guys thought about this week in the comments below. All right, my friends, I'll catch you guys next week. Peace out.